All right, we're going to get started here in just a little bit once I get the high sign that the live program is ready to start. Why, I got one.
Well, I have about 5 in response to that statement. Okay, there we go.
That's all I got. Good evening. Welcome to our second public information forum on the hotel acquisition project that's going to occur at 8200 Quinault Drive. My name is Rick Walk. I am the Director of Community Economic Development for the City of Lacey. And tonight we're going to have a presentation format of a program followed by a Q&A. So kind of as an overview of the agenda for tonight, we'll provide a just a general overview of the project and partnerships. Then we'll have LIHI, the Low Income Housing Institute, do a presentation about who they are and how they would operate such a facility. And then we'll follow up the formal presentations with a question and answer period. For as long as there's questions are being proposed, and we'll look at scheduling and concluding this program at about in 90 minutes at about 7:30. And first, we also, with the Q&A, we'll have a panel of individuals that represent various parts. And before I make all the introductions, I do want to thank all of our partners that got to this point. And that's the Washington State Department of Commerce, Thurston County, the City of Olympia, City of Tumwater, City of Lacey, of course, and LIHI, the Low Income Housing Institute. And in terms of looking at how to take a regional response and program to try to address some of the issues we're experiencing related to homelessness in our communities. So tonight we're joined by a panel of individuals, including Scott Spence, City Manager of the City of Lacey, Tom Webster, Program Manager for the Office of Housing and Homeless Prevention with Thurston County, Keely Marino, Homeless Response Manager for Thurston County, Josh.Castle is the Director of Engagement and Communications with LIHI, Nathan Pepin, who is the Director of Homeless Response within State Properties with Department of Commerce. And then over on the far wall we have Councilmember Lenny Greenstein with the Lacey City Council, Councilmember Carolyn Cox, also with the Lacey City Council, and also Chair of the Regional Housing Council. We also have Deputy Chief Robert Hollis with the Lacey Police Department, Assistant City Manager Shannon Kelly Fong with the City of Lacey, John Brown, who is the Program Manager for LIHI, and then we also have Jacinta Stilchis with affordable housing programs with Thurston County, and Darian Lightfoot, who is the Director of Housing and Homeless Response Services for the City of Olympia. And so as we go through this program, as I said, we go through the front part of it with the general presentation. We'll have Q&A, so depending on the questions, we have the people in the room that be able to best address those questions. So to begin, why we're here, Back in somewhere around May, the governor's office of the state of Washington issued a directive based off funding provided by the Washington State Legislature to address homelessness in the state's right-of-ways, particular Interstate 5 and Interstate 90. And this is a program that's not just in our area, that's looking at issues of encampments in King County, Pierce County, Snohomish County, and Spokane County, as well as Thurston County. And so as they approached us at the local community, say, we got this initiative, we want to start addressing the encampments in the right-of-ways. We want to try to put these individuals, quickly move them out of these right-of-way areas into better living situations, and wanted to start working with the local jurisdictions. Quickly, we were able to say, look, there's a lot of individuals out there, and there are not enough shelter and housing resources to accommodate that in such a short time frame. And some of the targeted right-of-ways that the state was looking at in Thurston County are the I-5 interchange near Lily Road, Pacific Avenue, Slater-Kinney, as well as some state land portions that located around Wheeler Avenue, Plum Street, 14th Avenue, and Henderson Boulevard. So again, as we were looking at this effort, they wanted to have this accomplished by the end of June, I think at the time. And quickly, it was like something infeasible just because of lack of resources. And just kind of articulate that, down at the bottom of the screen is kind of the little status of resources we have currently. Right now, well, this is based off of a point in time count that occurred in 2020. At that time, it was estimated that there were about 526 individuals that were unsheltered in the region out of about 1,000 unhoused individuals. I think in the 2022 PIT count, that number of unhoused individuals out in the Thurston region was estimated to be around 430. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the numbers went down or up. It's just that there are different methods of counting. So, but just to articulate that there's quite a few individuals that need housing resources as well as support services. Currently, in the county, we have approximately 164 shelter beds for adults without children, and those are at capacity now. That's out of 233 shelter beds, but those other shelter beds are for restricted populations such as under 18 individuals as well as families with children. And so just for single adults, men or women, we have about 164 shelter bed capacity in the county. And along with that, we have about 302 permanently supportive housing units in the county. And we just expanded that by 60 to the 302 mark in the last year and a half with the Unity Commons project at 2828 Martin Way. And now they're getting ready to finish that with a second phase, which would add another 63 units approximately. But as you can see, that there is a challenge with the need versus what we have for infrastructure and system for providing shelter and housing. So because we were already working as pretty strongly as a region and also with the Regional Housing Council, when the state approached us, we already had the coordination already in place. And through that process, we were identified several projects, and the Department of Commerce was able to identify about $37 million in funds that they can contribute to provide these, expand these resources in the Thurston region. Out of that $37 million, there is just under $1 million are allocated to providing outreach to the people already in the right-of-ways. This outreach is important because any successful placement in housing, you got to start developing relationships and getting them to understand to make that choice to move into housing. They also are providing $200,000 for hotel vouchers for domestic violence victims. That's important because there are many individuals that are trying to run from unsafe conditions, and trying to maintain their safety is important. So that's the hotel voucher system is a key for that program. Also, I mentioned Unicoms before. Unicoms also has a shelter tied to that project. And the state was looking to, was using $3.4 million to reserve 24 of those shelter beds and provide funding for their management and operation for the next 3 years. And then also, there's another project proposed in Olympia on the Franz Anderson roadway. It's a tiny home village, about 50 units, which will be funded with $6.2 million of the state dollars. And then I mentioned the 2828 Martin Way Phase 2. There's been a funding gap to finish Phase 2, and the Department of Commerce identified $2 million of the package to help bridge that gap so that those 63 units can continue construction and come online. Which brings us to this hotel acquisition project at 8200 Quinault Drive out in the Hawks Prairie area. And that project itself, the state's allocated $24 million for property, $15 million of that for property acquisition, and then $5 million for renovation and remodel work, and then also committed to funding operations of the facility for 2 years at $2 million a year for a total of $4 million. So that brings out the whole funding package that the state brought when they brought this initiative to the Thurston County, and we identified the lack of resources. So the state tied that gap to help build infrastructure to help meet this need. So with the site at 8200 Quinault Drive, again, this is a project that is currently, the property is currently under contract by LIHI, the Low Income Housing Institute, for purchase with a scheduled closing date to be in January. The current hotel is operating with about 124 rooms on about 2.2 acres, has about 133 parking spaces, and a defined site that will eventually be secured. Also, of the existing conditions, I want to point out too that currently we ran some numbers, and in 2021, there are about 448 calls for service for police response out at the site. And accordingly, year to date this year, we have about 416, so we're on pace to meet or exceed the 2021 numbers. And that's important to point out too, because this is one of the barometers we see in this hotel acquisitions. We already have a condition out there that's causing a high demand for emergency and police response. And with this particular type of acquisition, we're looking at that could potentially go down with a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week on-site management. So some of the expectations, and then before I turn it over to Josh with LIHI, and of course he'll go into more detail on some of these items, and some of this may be a little bit repetitive, but it's really important to emphasize. Some of the expectations of the partnerships we had going into this is this project, this acquisition would convert the hotel into an enhanced shelter that would achieve approximately 118 fully furnished rooms, some rooms for staff and case management offices. I mentioned before, but there'll be a fully secured site with fencing and gate. Also, 24/7 on-site security. Individuals placed there will be required to go through case management, abide by a code of conduct that will be established by LIHI in partnership with the partners. Also, there'll be on-site services provided with, if people were willing to accept services for the whole facets of needs that they may have. Those services will be provided on-site along with 3 meals a day, which is very important because for basic needs, people would not have to necessarily leave the site. They'll have their meals provided there. Another important aspect of this is a community advisory group or council. LIHI typically forms with their programs, this advisory group that Josh will go into more detail about. But in essence, it's a group that's formed with community members, surrounding property owners, business owners, individuals that have interest in the facility to be able to have a regular meeting, talk about the facility, learn how it operates. If there's issues, bring them up, address them, and create that good neighbor type of relationship to the surrounding community. Also, along with this, in terms of long-term operations management, we'll form an operations council. This will be with representatives from the City of Lacey, Thurston County, Department of Commerce, and LIHI, so that if issues are popping up or related operations, we can talk about that and develop strategies to address those issues, and also make sure that things are operating according to everybody's intentions. Another key piece of this effort is while we're talking about enhanced shelter, because we need to meet the immediate need of the right-of-way initiative, and ultimately this would transition into a supportive housing environment in 2 to 5 years, depending on funding availabilities and again, timing. And of course, individuals placed there will be placed on a priority schedule. That priority schedule will be worked out in these 6 top priorities. One thing important to point out, at the hotel currently, we have individuals that are placed there using funding from the Housing Essential Needs Program, which means it's providing them shelter while they also get stabilized and work into permanent supportive housing. So those individuals, we are looking at their first priority to stay there once the hotel is acquired and not be displaced by its acquisition and remodel. So that's one of the things that's important to all the partners and that we're going to be working towards to make sure that they are not displaced out of the hotel site. Number 2 priority would be the persons that are currently in the I-5 right-of-way, the state's right-of-way, and that is a high priority because a lot of this funding is coming from the state, so we got to meet that immediate need. After that, then we'll place individuals that are identified by the existing Thurston County Coordinated Entry System, followed by 4th priority being adults living in the City of Lacey or Thurston County that are displaced from unsheltered encampments that are not on that Coordinated Entry Master List. And then 5 would be with the written permission of Thurston County, other agreed upon population from Thurston County. And then 6, the final bullet is, because this is something we want to use as a Thurston region asset, we want to ensure that first priority is for individuals needing services are placed there from Thurston County and not from elsewhere in the state. However, we recognize that if we're being successful and that's the facility is not operating at full capacity, that if it's operating at less than 75% capacity, there'd be the opportunity to place other individuals from other locations based on consultation with Department of Commerce, City of Lacey, and LIHI, and Thurston County. So it's we want to make sure that this is a resource, again, as an asset for the local community, but also recognizing that if we have capacity and there is need, we don't want to have it operating at less than full capacity. So with that quick run through of an overview, I'm going to turn it over to Josh to probably go into a little bit more detail and probably see some other items that will sound familiar. So that, Josh, and I'll bring the clicker over to you.
There we go. I know it's working. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Josh.Castle. I'm the Community Engagement Director with LIHI, the Low Income Housing Institute. I know we have a big crowd, so we'll just keep it intimate. This is John Brown over here. He's our program manager with LIHI. He's going to be managing the staff of the site, and he also manages staff at our Tacoma sites and other sites in Thurston County and in Olympia. Sharon Lee, our executive director. I have the clicker. Our executive director of LIHI, she was here at the earlier meeting. She's a founding executive director. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about, well, first of all, I want to start with expressing our deep gratitude to our partners, City of Lacey, Thurston County, the Washington State Department of Commerce, and WashDOT as well. And all the community organizations and providers who have reached out to us. We've received a lot of feedback from folks that are interested in joining the community advisory group, and they're interested in, they might be a provider wanting to refer somebody in, or they're asking about the folks that are already staying there. So just grateful to all those who have reached out about that. We're reaching out and trying to answer all those questions. So just keep on sending those our way. So a little bit about LIHI. So we have affordable housing across the region. We have over 3,000 units of permanent affordable housing. Some of it's permanent supportive housing, some of it transitional housing in 6 counties, including in Thurston. We also have 2 urban rest stop hygiene centers providing laundry showers and restrooms in the Seattle region. And then across the region, everywhere from Olympia all the way up to Bellingham, we have 17 tiny house villages. We also have 2 enhanced shelters, one in Tacoma and one in Seattle. And these provide shelter, community safety, and case management to help folks get into permanent housing. A couple examples. So LIHI has a footprint in the region here. So we have Billy Frank Jr. Place, 43 units of permanent affordable housing. This is serving veterans, people with disabilities, young adults, and others. We recently opened a building called Unity Commons, which is 65 units. This is taking care of those veterans, seniors, and people living with disabilities. Both of those sites take singles and couples. In addition to the permanent housing, there's also a 58-bed, 24/7 enhanced shelter in a partnership with Interface Works. So it has kind of it's sort of multi-function site. A site that is a really good example of how we plan to operate this site and kind of the future of the site is Aspen Court in Tacoma, which is 94 units, the former Comfort Inn there, and that one is serving just over 100 people. So this is just like this site, it's going to be enhanced shelter bridge housing for individuals, couples, and people with pets who are experiencing homelessness. A lot of folks have pets and they need they don't want to part with them, so we accommodate that at all of our sites. This is a collaboration with the City of Tacoma, the City of Lakewood, and Pierce County. And then just like with this site, in a couple of years, we plan to convert it into permanent supportive housing. And we're at about our 1-year anniversary at this site. So the site we're talking about tonight, so this is going to be, I'm going to reiterate some of what Rick said and go into a little bit of detail, but 118 fully furnished units that are for the residents, 124 rooms total. 6 of them are going to be for staff and case managers. And then the facility, we're going to fully enclose it with fencing for security. There's going to be community gathering, kitchen and hygiene spaces, or laundry facilities. There's also going to be building-wide Wi-Fi. And also there's a taco time right next to it, which I'm excited about. But anyway, this is kind of a same thing that Rick put up, so this is just a reiteration. This is the referral prioritization. I want to emphasize on here, because I've had this question quite a bit, that those who are living at the site, staying there right now, they're not going to be displaced. We're going to take care of them and make sure they're able to stay there. Or maybe they want to move into another situation, and we can help accommodate that, because we have a lot of housing across the region. So we're going to work with there's about 20 plus people there right now that we're going to work with. And this is kind of there's a lot of detail here, but this is a good thing to keep track of. A lot of folks are going to be coming from the rights of way, as Rick had mentioned, because that's the funding source from the state. So we're going to take care of that. We're going to have 24/7 robust staff at the site, including a shelter operations manager who's going to provide manage the shelter organizers, and they're all going to support the security and operations of the site around the clock. And then we're going to have case managers, a lot of them. We have, it's going to be 118 units. We're going to probably have about 130 to 140 people. So we don't want to have, we're going to have smaller caseload for each case manager. So we're looking at about 5 case managers there. And then we want the clients to abide by a code of conduct as a condition of staying at the site. We also employ grievance procedures. So if a resident doesn't agree with the decision that was made, they can go above the staff's, to go to the management and express that concern. So we have a process around that. Case managers are crucial to the program. So we have full-time case managers working on site. They're going to help residents with getting into permanent housing, getting jobs, access to health care, getting their IDs and education, removing warrants from the record, helping them clearing up any obstacle in the way of getting into permanent housing. So they're going to assist with all of that. The case managers, their colleagues work at a bunch of LIHI sites. They have direct access to our LIHI housing across the region, along with other subsidized housing and in some cases private market rate housing. A lot of times we are transitioning people back with their families. We're reuniting them. So they may have been with their family at one point, things got frayed along the way, they lost touch with them, and we make that connection happen again, make sure it's a safe, secure situation. Both parties want to get back together again. And then we buy the plane ticket, train ticket, bus ticket, and make sure that we get them where they need to go. We provide all the moving support. So we have a lot of case managers that help with that. One of them actually flew a resident to New York City to reunite them with their family there because they needed some special assistance. So we have a lot of great stories around those reunifications happening. We want the clients that enter into the program to know that they need to work with the case manager, meet regularly with them on a housing plan and whatever the next step is. And then these enhanced shelters, along with our tiny house villages, they are really a crucial stepping stone to get from homelessness to permanent housing. It's, basically folks are right on site, case managers working with the residents, much easier than if they're trying to reach them outside in a tent and they're trying to figure out where they are. It's a situation where somebody can get stable, safe, recover from trauma, and be able to look at that next step and work with the case manager to get there. A couple examples of what's in the code of conduct. So we want everybody to be just like you would be in your own neighborhood, in your own household, your roommates, everybody to be a respectful neighbor to their fellow residents and to the surrounding community. We have a no tolerance policy on violence and threatening behavior. We want it to be a safe site for everyone. No alcohol or drugs are allowed in public spaces. We know that people are going to be coming there that come with, challenges. They come with substance use disorder. That may be the case. When somebody is coming into the site that has dealing with those challenges, it's going to be a lot easier to help them get into treatment programs and everything else if they're inside and they're safe. So we want, but we're telling everyone when they move in, this is the condition of staying here. You can't have drugs and alcohol in public spaces. Also, safety and cleanliness standards. The residents are going to participate in chores, and basically what that means is that they, part of the condition of being there is helping with the upkeep and doing, litter patrol and things like that. And they're going to have regular meetings with the case management on a plan to get into housing, get employment. We are committed to being a good neighbor and an asset to Lacey and the surrounding community. One way that we do this is by forming this community advisor group. So a lot of folks have reached out with interest on this. This is going to be made up of neighbors, local businesses. We know there's a lot of them around the site, faith communities, schools, providers, and others. The idea is to provide community oversight, advisory input, and support into the program. These are monthly public meetings. They tend to be about an hour and a half each month. And if folks want to join, if they want to be a member, reach out to me. I'm going to put my email address up in a second. I'll send you an easy e-fill-in application you can fill out and send back. If you just want to come and attend the meetings, these are public meetings. You can join anytime and just check in on how the site's going. We'll meet with any group or neighborhood group or chamber of commerce or business or anybody that wants to meet with us. So reach out if you want us to come meet with your group. We also follow up promptly to your questions, concerns, ideas, or offers of support. So this is my email address. So if you want to join the community advisor group or hear about the meetings, please reach out to me. And if we also, by the way, a few months ago hired an amazing new volunteer programs manager. Her name is Kyle Lane. That's her email address. So if you want to volunteer to help with setting up the rooms, we're going to make a welcome basket for everybody when they come in. And if you want to donate clothes, meals, or other items, I know weather's getting really cold. Winter's right around the corner. We're going to need that. So if anyone is interested in doing that, please let us know. Lastly, here's my information. And then John Brown is a good one. He's great to talk with. He's going to be managing the staff of the site, so him and I are going to be working together. And then once we get the shelter operations manager in place and started, I'm going to basically hand this function off to them, the community outreach, but I'll still be around. So, and we're going to post that number everywhere. So just in the meantime, feel free to reach out to me, call me, or email me, or ask for a meeting. And that's our website too. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. So now, open up for any questions or answers that the audience may have. Is there anything that anybody would like to ask? Please raise your hand. And Donna will have a microphone. She'll come to you, and then.
Couple questions. First of all, you said there's 118 rooms, so there's going to be 116 rooms. Are those individuals? I mean, one person per room, or will there be multiple people per rooms? And then also, what if someone is in there and is not working towards progressing? I mean, is somebody going to be able to stay there forever and ever, or what are the incentives and how long can they be there if things aren't working for them?
Well, on the, somebody there and working towards progression, sometimes it can be a long process and some setbacks, and there's some state guidance that we have to follow in terms of trying to exit somebody into the next level or next stage of housing. But I'll let Josh talk about the room numbers and more detail about that progression of work.
Yeah, so first of all, your first question, there will be singles, individuals, and couples, and also people with pets, so, furry people too, will be there. And when it comes to somebody, their progression, so one thing I'll just say at the start, there's a little bit of a vetting process. So when somebody is referring somebody and they're making sure, can you work out in this program? Are you interested in getting into permanent housing? So they have that conversation, so they know before they even arrive that this is what the program they're entering into. And then when they get there, the shelter operations manager we'll sit down with them and go over the code of conduct and make sure they know, we want you to meet with the case manager. We want you to be, involved in working on what your future looks like. We will have a goal of, we tend to have a goal of about 6 months for people to move into permanent housing. But I'll say that we know there's going to be some folks that it's going to take longer for them. They might have a whole host of unique challenges, and that we want to work through obstacles to help with them work through to get, to make sure they can get on the path to get into housing and get housing ready. So no one's going to be, displaced or kicked out because they didn't find housing over a certain period of time. But we're going to push towards that goal of everyone getting as quickly into housing as possible.
And just to add on to that too, that placement and entry, of course, have the prioritized list, but it's also going to go through those individuals that are in the state right away. If they're willing to accept the housing, they're also going to need to know that, there's code of conduct and those type of pieces that they will need to follow, but also it's that vetting process that's mentioned, it's indicating that developing that relationship towards the goal of getting more housing. And I just lost my other point. But again, it's a progression, and it's also about developing that relationship to help the individuals to start making those choices. But also, it's mainly that code of conduct that they need to follow that keeps them in place and moving towards that goal.
So what if they don't adhere to the code of conduct? Where do people go? What happens? What's the process?
Sure. So we have a lot of experience with this, where folks might not, might be in violation of the code of conduct. So there's parts of the code of conduct that are more serious, like violence. If there's safety risk, that's not something we can have at the site. And we're going to work on finding them into a better situation that meets their needs. If they are, if they're doing something that is not necessarily like a safety risk, our case managers really work with them to try to get them, there's a discipline process in place, but it's a lot of times it's like progressive discipline. They implement those kind of things, but as long we basically provide many chances if it's not as long as it's not like a safety violence risk type of thing. John, do you want to respond to that? How you guys do that?
And then also, if we have one of our clients that are, and like Josh said, we have NOVs, which are notice of violations, of little things. But again, our biggest concern is, of course, the safety of the clients and staff. And if, we have someone that was endangering themselves or others, then we would take other procedures. But again, like Josh was stating, our goal is to help these individuals. And if we run into anything of like, let's say they forget to do one of their chores or whatever the case is, we can, have those conversations with the case manager and then just go forward with the NOVs. And again, we have to take into consideration that these individuals are coming directly off the street, and we have to also give them time to get acclimated to being indoors as well, and following the code of conduct. So that's kind of the steps that we're taking in that direction.
And the other point I'd forgotten to mention was also that third priority is the placement through the local coordinated entry program, and this may be something Keely can probably touch upon a little bit more detail, but again, that placement and then start working, as John said, in getting them stabilized and comfortable, and then start working with that ultimate goal of getting them into a permanent housing situation. Perfect.
So are you saying the people that are going to be staying here, they are to stay on the premises, on the property?
They'll have the ability
Or
to
will they
leave
be
the
going
site
in the
to-
community, and what if there's a code of conduct breach out in the community, then what happens?
Well, they'll be able to go out into the community because they're going to be looking, potentially, job interviews or grocery shopping or those other things that basic life needs. But, Josh, can you touch upon kind of what that dynamic looks like?
Yeah. So, I mean, in the code of conduct, there's no loitering or, you can't, disrupt neighbors. That's in local businesses. So we take that seriously. The thing is that we have very few situations, and John can attest to this. We have very few situations where somebody is in so much violation of the code of conduct that they actually need to leave the site. That doesn't happen that often. It's usually if it's like violence or threatening behavior. But if somebody is presenting a harm to our neighbors or to a business, we have to look at that and see, can they continue to be in that program if they're not being respectful of the neighborhood? Because we have to make sure that we're being respectful neighbors. But that is all outlined in the code of conduct, and we can actually send that out. We have that already put together. So it's just not. The thing is that when somebody is staying at the site, they already know what the program they're entering into and that they agreed to. There was the point of being referred before they even got to the site, and then there was a point of working with the manager there to go over the rules and the code of conduct. So a lot of times they're very appreciative that they've been, living outside. They're now in a program, getting a full range of services to get any help they need with anything. There's also 3 meals being provided a day, so people don't have to worry about food security. They have those meals there. There will be people. I had a question at the previous meeting. So what do they do during the day? They were actually concerned they're going to go around and cause trouble or something. And the thing is that people are free to come and go. They go about their daily lives just like all the rest of us do, to go grocery shopping, to go visit any of the businesses around there, grab a taco at taco time. People are free to do that, and we don't anticipate that people are just going to do that, and just like all the rest of us do the same type of daily activities and go about their lives. We just don't have that type of issue where there's complaints about some client or resident at our sites, just because we have those rules in place and they know what they are.
And I just want to add on too that today, in just an existing environment without this facility, we have individuals out in the community that we interact with. We have the community resource unit that the Lacey PD operates, and of course, our other partner jurisdictions have their homeless response services, and so we're constantly addressing. And because a facility comes here, doesn't necessarily mean that activity that's currently there goes away, but more than likely will not increase because of this facility, because this is not a drop-in for services type of facility. People are placed there, they're entering this program, they're have a structure a little bit. They can come and go, like Josh said, just like any one of us, but it's a little different model than, say, a drop-in service type of facility.
And we have staff doing perimeter checks, and they're checking on making sure that everybody's okay, but they're also making sure there's nothing going on that has nothing, that a non-client, somebody that's there that doesn't belong there, that might be causing any sort of issue around the sidewalk or the streets around the site. So that we have, we're going to have security in place. We're going to have security cameras. There's security cameras there now, so it'll just be transitioned into the program. But the staff, they go around. They just make sure everything is clean and safe right around the site. They do regular perimeter checks, so there'll be that element as well.
Yes.
Probably be heard if I tried. I just wanted to say I appreciate very much what you're attempting to do. And I'm wondering, I work over at St. Martin's, and they have a variety of programs. For example, at one point they were doing work with a group downtown Olympia, Bread and Roses. So it was an opportunity for student outreach and to offer something back to the community. I'm wondering, one, if that's a possibility to have something like that. I have a question in my mind. It sounds like a really good deal. It's so good that, and I know how word spreads around the community. Are we just inviting more people to come to this really nice situation? Granted, you're helping them, but I mean, are we bringing more homeless here because it's going to be so nice? And getting, I'm not opposed to helping people. Please don't misunderstand me. But I have my concerns about this becoming a focal point for even people from out of state, because good news travels fast. How are you going to handle that?
Well, Rick, you want to take that one, and I'll.
Sure, I'll start off, and I'm sure there'll be some others that would be willing to add on. But from our perspective, we need these type of resources if we're going to address the existing circumstances in our community that people are concerned about. And so having resources and building this system of housing types builds basically a stepping stone for people to go in to get out of their current condition and into something a little bit better. So if we don't build these type of things, then we're not dealing with the local issues that people are concerned about. We can't control what migration occurs because people in general have, people move around for jobs, people move around for all quality of life, all different things. And there's now a way that we could, if we build something and start building these resources and programs, prevent somebody from coming into the community to try to capitalize, just like anything else that people do to look at bettering their lives. Now, not saying necessarily this will cause that, because, but again, those type of movement already is occurring without those type of resources. And if anybody wants to add on to that.
Well, let me add on. I mean, I also looked at Nathan because Nathan probably has a better answer. But I think in general, one of the issues is that there's been a lack of enforcement on the right-of-ways on I-5, and that's been an issue. And so with this partnership with the state of Washington, WSP is going to work with the local communities and actually help no longer make that a refuge for homeless individuals, because one, it's not safe, it's not good for them, and it's not good for the community. Two, we are part of a bigger puzzle that the state is working on. I would say the City of Lacey has been, advocating for the last 4 or 5 years for the state to help local communities, because we cannot do this alone. And so Thurston County has been a focal point of where this investment's been made, but King County, Spokane County, and others are also part of that. So I understand the question about if you build it, will they come? But the state is actually investing in other areas to ensure that there's enough resources to deal with the homeless individuals that are in King County, Pierce County, as well as Thurston County. So Nathan, maybe.
Yeah, so I'll say 2 things. First, I'll start off with I think there is a misnomer about the idea of the transportability of homeless individuals. Fundamentally, they actually don't move that much, and they typically stick to where they are from a standpoint. And one of the reasons for that is it's really tough being homeless. It is not an easy thing, and you just can't pack up what you got and move somewhere and be like homeless somewhere else. It's just not that easy. They get accustomed to what services they have available to them. They get accustomed to the people that are around them. They get accustomed to the water, where they get resources, where they can shower. You just don't get the availability to pick up and move. It's just not that easy. And fundamentally, when you do the assessments of individuals who are at these sites, almost entirely, and I mean almost 100% of them, are from the area where you're doing, and they've been there for 7, 8, 9 years. They may have moved there at one point in time, but they've been homeless in that situation, in that community, generally for a very long time. The other thing to what Scott said is that, this is an effort, particularly here right now, that we have going on in Pierce County, King County. So up along the I-5 corridor, there's not really a reason to move. If we had unlimited resources, if everybody who moved here could get into a situation where they had housing that had 3 meals a day, had opportunity for hygiene, had opportunity for housing, had opportunity for job placement, had opportunity for case management, maybe we might find some more movement. But the reality is we don't. We have 118 beds. That's not even enough to cure the problem on the state right away in Thurston County. So there's not a real incentive to move here for this, because even if you moved here, the likelihood you're going to get it is very low. So I think there's a number of reasons why that doesn't exactly happen that way. So hopefully that answers your question. I think it's a common thought that individuals have, like, well, wow, this sounds great. Are we going to produce more homelessness by this effort? That rarely translates to the answer to the question for a variety of reasons.
What about
Yeah, the first, I want to make sure I answer that. So just quick point on the second question. There's folks that are already living there right now, and many of them are borderline. You know, they might have come right from the streets, and they're kind of housing insecure. So one thing we're not going to do is make those folks homeless. We're going to make sure, you know, I just want to make that clear. You mentioned St. Martin's programs that you're interested in getting that connected with the site, and we would be interested in that. We have great partnerships with faith communities. John knows about this. With you know, at several of our sites, well, actually all of our sites, our villages, our shelters, and our housing sites. We work with schools. We work with pre-apprenticeship programs. We work with churches. You know, like the local community council, the local chamber of commerce. Seattle Park centers, things like that. So businesses, you know, want to help out in different ways. So absolutely.
You work with like Alcoholics Anonymous or NA or any other
Yeah.
Groups for recovery?
We do. Yeah, we have treatment and recovery programs, and we'll be definitely. I think we might be needing some of that at the site. So we'd be interested, and I'll hand you my my card at the end of the thing.
Yes, yes.
I have, oh, sorry. No, you.
I had something really brilliant to say, and it keeps slipping out of my mind. It will come back. Is this on? Now it's on. So one of my favorite exercises, just for fun, for anyone in this room, is if you're sitting in a room full of people and this conversation comes up around people are just moving here because the services are so good that they have to live in right-of-ways, that ask a room, who here was born here? Who moved here in the last 10 years? Who moved here in the last 5 years? Who moved here in the last year? And turning that conversation around of, yeah, this is a desirable part of the world to live in. Many people are living here. About 2% of us, depending on where you're at, or what room you are sitting in, are actually born here. So when we're having this conversation, let's also keep that in mind. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But I had something else way more brilliant to say. It's gone.
That was pretty brilliant.
Yes,
Hi, I wanted to just kind of say up front, I am a service provider in Olympia, so I am coming with a biased lens. I am so excited about this. I cannot wait. I am happy that it's taking place in Lacey. Like, I live down the road. I'm a Lacey resident. So today I'm here as a Lacey resident and not as a representative of the social service agency that I work for. I had several questions, so I was kind of waiting for other folks to ask their questions before I got into mine. So if there's anybody, you got more? Okay, all right. If folks have vehicles, will they be able to stay at the hotel? And if they don't have vehicles, will they have the capacity to buy them and store them at the hotel, like for jobs, for moving, you know, whatever?
Yeah, it's not like a where somebody's like living, you know, it's not like a safe parking site, for example, but it has a lot of parking spots there.
Perfect.
So folks that have vehicles will be able to park.
Yeah, safe parking is completely different.
Yep.
That would also be wild. It would be great, Lacey. Safe parking would be great.
We'll work with Lacey on it.
Yeah.
I won't get in trouble.
You touched on it a little bit, but I would like to know a little bit more about the accountability process. Like, what does it look like for the residents, and like, what kind of support systems do they have in navigating the accountability process with y'all?
Sure. I'm going to hand that to John.
So as far as accountability, what do you mean exactly? Like,
So say someone violates, like the grievance procedure. They violate the code of conduct, not like a violent threat. I totally understand that. That makes a lot of sense, that those are no tolerance. But like, say something that it's like a reoccurring issue of not keeping your space tidy, like for weeks or months. Like,
so
what does that look like?
with that, again, we would work with the case manager to all get in a room and have a conversation with that client. And then too, if that does continue, then, you know, we do serve NOVs, which is notice of violations. And then if that does continue, then we try to put everyone on a contract to kind of give them steps. And again, in no way, shape, or form are we trying to put anybody back into homelessness. And we're willing to give them as many chances as they need to get on a good path to get them into a permanent housing. So we have a lot of different tactics that we can use. Like I've stated before that in the last meeting that we're going to mirror this just like we have Aspen Court, which is off of Hosmer. And like Josh said, it's going to be, our year comes up in December, that we've been open for a full year. It's more of a rougher area, and we've had a lot of successful move-outs. We've had families come back together, and really with having Days In, we're really going to have it like a hub. So for example, at Aspen Court, we have case management, we have Goodwill come by, do resume classes. We've had individuals come there, actually get forklift training. We work with an organization that actually brought a forklift in the parking lot to do the training. So really, we're really gonna really stock up on the resources and really give the individuals and our clients, just the resources that they need to be successful.
That's so legit. Thank you. Also, can I get forklift training, please? Big machines are fun. I also was curious about kind of your retention rates. Like, I guess, like, you talk a lot about wanting to make sure that people aren't being cycled back out on the streets. And so I was wondering what your data was to kind of back that up. Getting a little personal here.
Yeah, sure. Well, so we have a really high success rate of moving people into permanent housing. That's number one. And then when it comes to folks, we don't have that many people. It does happen, but we don't have that many people who do something, that's a serious safety risk or violence, where they have to immediately leave. That does happen sometimes. It doesn't happen that often. Then a lot of times the case manager will work with the providers in the region. They'll say, hey, can we find a better situation for this client that better meets their needs? So they'll transition somebody into that, and they'll keep in touch with them to make sure that they got into a better situation. Just as an example, the Village program, there's about 50% of those who leave the site get into permanent housing, and about 6% transitional housing. So it's about long-term housing is 56%. Now, it's very hard to get into housing, and some people, they move out, they move in temporarily with somebody. There's other categories there, or they don't tell us where they went. They just left because they could do that. The other forms of enhanced shelter in comparison are about 23% that get into permanent housing in our region, not the LIHI ones. And then the basic shelter is like 3%. So we have a pretty high success rate, and that applies to our enhanced shelters as well. That 50%, that tends to be around the rate of folks who move into permanent housing.
Awesome, thank you. I have 3 more questions, I promise. That is it. Probably not. Do you guys offer in-house counseling? You did talk a little bit about substance use counseling or within your case management services, or are you relying on BHR for that, behavioral health services?
In-house counseling, we have case managers. Are you referring to? We have case managers, 5 of them.
So like a counselor, a therapist.
Like behavioral health type of thing? I think we're adding behavioral health, right, John?
Yes, we'll have behavioral health there as well, yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You guys are so great. Okay, and then what's the makeup of the community meetings? Like do they have agency? Do they have decision-making power? Like that kind of stuff?
So the community advisory group that we have, by the way, we have 17 of these across the region, because we have one at all of our villages and a few of our other shelters. So it's an advisory capacity, but they definitely hold us accountable. So and people pay attention to them because they're voters and they're taxpayers too, right? And they're neighbors of the site. So that's actually a way to get really involved when you join those meetings. They're not necessarily all cheerleaders that show up. They're people that are there to, they might be there to like keep track of things and relay concerns. But they also might be, they want to help out the site in some way. They might be somebody who started off totally opposed to the project, like at the beginning, and then they turn around and became one of the biggest supporters when they saw the program in place and they saw that it was active. So although they can't make decisions like staff can make decisions, they can provide input that we highly value and we take it seriously. And we know that when the next monthly meeting's coming up, if we don't get back to them within that time frame, they're going to ask us at that meeting, and it's going to be obvious. So So we follow up when people have a concern. We make sure to address it quickly, and that doesn't have to be through the group. They could just do that. We're going to have the number posted for the village for the shelter operations manager, so that people can call them or email them if they see something, if they have a concern, or if they want to help or provide a service. On the other end, right? They can do that, and then they can always get in touch with me.
Awesome, thank you. I actually was thinking that the community meetings meant for the residents, but that makes a lot more sense.
Oh, they do. We do have community meetings for
Oh.
residents. Thank you for, we do have those. You want to mention about that?
Yes. So, so because of the size of it, like at Aspen Court, we do usually we have it about once a month. We do it by floor because there's so many clients that we have, and pretty much we just again go over the code of conduct, go over like right now the big thing we have coming up is Thanksgiving, seeing what individuals want to do for Thanksgiving. I know for Halloween, we had individuals wanted to put designs over their doors. So again, we're really focused on building the community within because it really becomes, a community. And then two, we just make sure that we are also listening to our clients too, because at the same time, we have a responsibility to them and they also have a responsibility to us too, right? So we want to make sure that we are adhering to things. And sometimes, our clients may have little ideas, right? That they would like to implement, and we can take that back and say, hey, do you think this will work? And we can give it a shot. So from them being there, we're learning as much as they're learning from us as from them.
Awesome, thank you. And then this is my last question, probably. Are there low barrier sites that y'all can transfer row folks to if they don't qualify for Quinault? Because as what I understand, being a service provider, I am privy to a little bit more information like growl and stuff. And so I know LIHI is a little bit higher barrier, right? So are there low barrier sites that y'all operate that y'all can transfer folks to?
Well, I'll just a quick correction. I'm going to hand it over to Rick. We have sites of all different different varieties. So we have everything from really harm reduction is a word we use a lot. That's synonym of low barrier basically. And then we don't say like high barrier, but it might be a situation where might be families living there, and we're more strict on things like drugs and alcohol. But we have a whole range of different sites that can accommodate people's needs. If they're coming with pretty serious challenges, or if they just need that extra step up to move into housing. And Rick can.
Yeah, and also too with the commerce funding involved too. This is going to be subject to the state guidelines for low barrier, code of conduct and rules, but also in case management. But it is going to be considered a low barrier with those rules. But there are also other facilities that are in the region. But also going back to the beginning of my presentation with all the different funding that's coming down, there's going to be additional 50-unit tiny village being constructed eventually next year. And that's also going to provide additional opportunities for shelter or housing. And so there's going to be a myriad of type of facilities. And then also with the permanent supportive housing at 2828 Martin Way coming online too, that's going to be a stepping stone and part of this piece too. So there's going to be different types of housing and opportunities. And it's just a matter of getting the resources online to help serve the need.
And my understanding from the way that the proposal and then the requirements within the proposal from Department of Commerce that we sent in and was approved for this project, those rules would look very much like CHG rules, and the requirements are basically you're from the right of way and you're not a sex offender, because that's what these funds are for.
Not a minor either. Not a minor either.
And not a minor. So that's it. And not a mind reader. We don't allow mind readers.
One more thing on that. I think that if I heard your question correctly, the thing that I took away from your question was that the idea that this is the only thing that's available for right-of-way people, which isn't remotely true. There's nothing that's available in Thurston County that's not available for the right-of-way individuals. So outreach people identify what the path is for that individual. We have somebody on Pacific we haven't been able to clear because they're a really high acuity need, and we don't have a facility to put them in. And so we're trying to figure out what we do with that couple. And so, this is one option that is a, fully funded option from us. But, you know, as Rick had in his slide in the beginning, we have $200,000 for DV shelter, which has nothing to do with this and nothing to do with Unity Commons. It's just if we run into somebody that has DV issues, we can place them in a separate facility. And so there's nothing available, there's nothing not available as long as the individual is identified right away. Outreach can identify a bed or a place for them to go. We will exercise our option to be able to put them there. This is simply one of the options that's available in a suite of options that's available.
Thank you.
So, I love what I'm hearing, and I must admit, I was a bit skeptical about the whole process. Because as you know, we've been dealing with the homeless situation just off campus for, well, I don't know, 6, 7 years. And I really appreciate what you folks are doing. I just have a couple of questions regarding, one, are you a private organization? That's one. And then two, this is all well and good right now, getting all of the building purchased, and we have, sounds like really good staff. How is this going to be sustained? Is this a federal or state or city? Is it a conglomeration of all those plus private input? Could you say a little more about that?
Well, to the last part about this, it's a partnership with between the jurisdictions and the state of Washington, the Commerce, and Washington State Patrol and DOT. And so there's MOUs about setting this up. And of course, sustaining it, you know, we got 2 years of funding, but that funding is going to need to continue to be provided. And that will probably turn it over to Nathan about the long-term strategy for funding.
Yeah, so I don't want to go too much into the state budget process, but essentially, there are different ways to put money into the state budget. So it is correct that in this first year, it is federal dollars out of the state local fiscal recovery fund, out of coronavirus funds. But the way that the legislature put it into the budget, it's ongoing item. So it's a baseline budget item that exists in the budget until and unless the legislature voted to take it out. And so there's $45 million that is a baseline budget. We at Commerce made the internal decision to couple that $45 million with the money to be able to take down this hotel and with some other funds, which is a one-time thing. But there is $45 million for the operation of what we're doing and for continued outreach to continue essentially in perpetuity. The legislature would have to take action to actually remove it from the budget at this point in time. And, you know, that can always happen. There's a budget appropriation cycle every single year, but this starts off as in the budget already. And it typically is much harder to remove something from the budget once it's there than it is to, you know, get it in there. So we're there. We expect it to continue. We are hoping and we are working to make it grow with the governor's office and with our other state partners. But right now, the money to continue the support for the building is continued in perpetuity.
And then with that, though, there's also a 40-year deed restriction, is that right?
Yeah, so Commerce requires on any capital acquisition, 50 in King County, but there's a 40-year covenant on the property that's a deed restriction to use it this way. And that's one of the reasons why we have that list right there of what the kind of priority of things are. We're at some point in time, hopefully, going to run out of individuals who are on the state right away. That may be 3 years, that may be 5 years. Nobody knows exactly what the number is, but at some point in time, this will then be a resource simply for the Lacey, Olympia, Tumwater, and Thurston County to address people off the coordinated entry list and address other homelessness that exists in the region.
And Tom, do you want to have some more on the funding, and we'll go back to the organization status of LIHI? Josh,
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to add is, and Rick in one of the slides talked about converting this to permanent supportive housing in 2 to 5 years, and that's really critical for the sustainability. So we don't need to put in $2 million a year for operations as an enhanced shelter. Once it becomes permanent supportive housing, then there's rent that's associated with that. People are paying rent for those units, and that will sustain the operation. So that's really critical to that conversion eventually in that 2 to 5 year time period into permanent supportive housing will ensure the long-term sustainability of the property.
We're a 501c nonprofit organization.
Thanks.
I have more questions.
Good.
I'm so sorry. So earlier in the presentation, there was a mention of a vetting process. Can y'all explain what that looks like and what might cause someone to be denied?
What'd you say?
The vetting process,
Vetting
what it
process,
looks like
yeah.
and why someone might be accepted, why someone might be denied.
Well, I think it's when they're doing, so like on the list, there's people being referred from the rights of way. So they're going to have that conversation with them. They're going to know about, there's some open beds at a hotel that just got converted into a enhanced shelter. And here are they're going to have an idea of what the rules are in place. Can you live in a community like this? Is this going to be a place where you'll be successful? Are you, do you want to get into housing? Do you want some support with your situation? And it's really basically what it is.
So there's no like interview or anything that like when a person accepts it, like they aren't vetted on like a more, I guess, like formatic
Well,
level.
and then when they get there, so I should have mentioned this. Sorry. When they get there, they meet with, they interview with the shelter operations manager to go over. Here are the rules. Here's the code of conduct. Will this work for you? Are you going to be able to abide by this? So they do go through that. But Rick, you want to add more, or is that?
No, not really. Keely, do you? I mean, it is a process. The basics is but no minors and no sexual offenders.
Yep.
But anybody else, it's just being referred there. But also, as they go in, they're going into it eyes open of what the program is, what the expectation is, and they wouldn't necessarily be denied for any other reason other than participating in that program and making that effort.
Yeah, we'd rather not, deny. It's like one of the questions I had earlier was, does that mean you guys are not letting, people with criminal convictions on there, felons, whatever? It's like, that's not what it is. That's actually, we want people that need that support, that have those obstacles in place, that could use that case management to get that warrant off the record, to get that eviction off the record too.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm looking at Keely, but also too with the outreach effort where these individuals are met and the relationships developed in the field, they're being offered housing and options. These type of things are being asked of them at that point too. So I think it's, because I think so just in general, some individuals are concerned about going in certain type of shelter conditions and they're going to have that choice of whether to accept that or not. And I looked at Keely if that's a accurate phrasing of that.
Well, is there an option for SOs then?
No, not with the right-of-way, unless Franz Anderson becomes a thing. And I think Interfaith can have level 1s, but not levels 2 or 3. But that's a real barrier in our entire community. There's not any housing really for any registered sex offenders. So I think, within the parameters of the requirements from the state around any projects associated with right-of-way, if you looked up, the Consolidated Homeless Grant guidelines, there's a list of things you cannot kick people out because they don't get into treatment. You can't kick people out on these conditions, and there's a pretty lengthy list. And like you can't, and low barrier basically is you can't exclude people because they have a criminal record or they have a substance use issue or mental health issue or whatever. You can't exclude them. Like you let them in to help them get stabilized. So it's the same exact guidelines within the right-of-way projects as in those guidelines. So I would assume that would mean you're a right-of-way person. Here's your options. Do you like that? Good. Like, do you want to go to Franz Anderson? You want to go to Unity Commons? You want to go to the hotel? I'm hoping I think that's what I'm hearing. Yeah.
On the level of the housing itself and the program, which sounds really positive, it sounds like you have a lot of good results. So what happens to the people who've been there for a while and nothing seems to be working? Is there, and maybe you've already addressed this and I simply wasn't paying attention, I apologize. But what happens to somebody who's gone through this whole process, but for whatever reason, their issues are insuperable? What do you do in that situation? Do you house them forever or?
Yeah. There's no arbitrary deadline or cutoff date because they didn't find housing in time. We do have a goal we want people to work on, like generally, it's a 6-month goal to move into permanent housing. But we also recognize some of like what we talked about earlier, is that people sometimes have a whole host of things going on that they need a little bit of help with that are like conviction on the record, warrant, eviction on the record, credit, whatever it is. They have a whole host of things going on that we need to just tackle one at a time. So some people are going to take longer than others. Some people have a substance use disorder and they need help getting into treatment and recovery programs. And they might, and it isn't just employment that it could be, they're not, there's government benefits out there that they don't even realize they qualify for, and the case manager can get them signed up for that, so they have some income coming in from that. And then it's just kind of looking at the variety of housing options that are out there, because the biggest issue is the lack of affordable housing, period, across the region. I think it's, everyone's given, many opportunities, and it's not like if you're not helped by a certain period of time, then you have to leave. It's not like that at all. Does that help? Yeah. Cool.
The other, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'll say the other thing, again, I'm going to go back to that conversion to permanent supportive housing. So there's, once that conversion happens, we're not going to kick everybody out of the hotel, the enhanced shelter, and then kind of put in a whole new group into that permanent supportive housing. So there's a possibility that some of those folks who are in that enhanced shelter could transition into permanent supportive housing, which is a permanent housing option if that's what's going to work for them. So as part of that transition, there is that potential that folks could be there for the long term.
I think there's an extended answer to your question that is, at least, again, what I heard. What about the people who fail out? There's going to be people who fail. There's going to be people who choose to leave. There's going to be people who fail out of the system. There's going to be people that simply LIHI, whatever they do, they're just not going to be able to help. They just may not be ready for it. Commerce made a decision in the very, very beginning of this that our money will follow those individuals so long as they can be found within Thurston County. And so one of the things that, if you do fail out, and we find you again in any public right-of-way, you don't have to anymore be on the state right-of-way. If we find you anywhere on any right-of-way and you're ready for housing, you're ready to make that commitment again, our money will follow you to the extent that we have resources available to bring you back in and try again. And so even to the extent of all of the efforts that they put through, there are going to be people who aren't ready. Hopefully, we can find them again at some point in time when they are, and we can bring them back in and give them that transition that they need.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions? No? All right. Well, I think that will conclude our program for tonight. I thank you all for coming out and attending. I thank all of our staff and panel for being here to answer questions, and some good questions. Also, the audience online, I appreciate everybody tuning in. So with that, we do have information on the City of Lacey website regarding about this project, some contact information, some frequently asked questions, and then, of course, Josh has provided his email and address in his presentation as well, and it's also his and John's contact information is on the flyers too. So anybody out there wanting to follow up with any other further questions, please reach out, and we'll be happy to respond. With that, thank you again, everybody, and have a good night.
All right.